for everyone for coming along. And yeah, Karl, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. And hello, everyone. Welcome for joining today, the webinar. I know you're giving up a very glorious sunny day today. So thank you for joining, coming online. And so today, I don't know how this has been positioned to you all, but it is an alternative funding with myself. And really, this is just sharing some experience, some insights, and hopefully enabling you with some helpful tips on your film funding and filmmaking career journeys. So we're starting off, this is just a portfolio of some of my films. So at the top is my very first film, The Cost of Love, and I shot that all in Greenwich. So I know Ravensbourne is based in Greenwich, and that's why I made affiliations with Ravensbourne. And so that all of this feature was all shot in Greenwich. Then The Adored, I shot in Snowdonia. That was my second feature. The Spiritualist was my first feature horror. Then I did a trilogy, Paranormal Farm 1, Paranormal Farm 2, and Paranormal Farm 3. And so I'm going to give you more insights and an overview into those. And below it's just some short films that I've created. Okay, so just an overview for everyone. So as I said, we're going to be looking at the end-to-end of filmmaking. So we're going to go from script to sales. So there's a lot to cover in that ground, but this is really just going quite lightly and just giving you some insights that I feel could enable you to go out and maybe motivate you, or if you just take a handful of these tips and tools, it could save lots of time and lots of money and be really helpful, a good resource for you. And how I'm going to do this, I'm going to be looking over the Paranormal Farm trilogy, so some tips and tools there, because all three of those films are made on a zero budget. So I took it from script, I'd like to say script, but it didn't really have a script, so I'll talk more about that, to sales. And all three are online. They're on like Amazon Prime. In fact, they've just come off Prime. Now you've got to actually pay for them. They were free, but we tried different systems to see which generates the best revenue. So we can look more into that later. So we'll look at the Paranormal Farm trilogy on a zero budget. Then we'll look at another film, a different film experience I had. And that was the horror film, The Spiritualist, that I created on a micro budget. And looking really at an overview, it's securing distribution with all of these films and the different ways that we carved out these film journeys. But before you do anything, as you know, we all start with pre-production. So in pre-production, I always think about the why and the who. So these are two big factors. So I always think with the why, there's two things you've got to think about. Why are you making this film? And secondly, why are you making this film? Okay, so stress on the you and a stress on the this. So why are you making this film? So I always think about this before I do any film. It's like, actually, why am I making this film? What insights do I have? Or what unique perspective do I have that maybe nobody else has shared already in this film journey? And my films have gone from the LGBTQ+ community. I've done a couple of films there, mainly around horror and thriller. That's my other portfolio. So I think actually what's my unique insights that I have to share? And I'm going to share those when we later in this webinar, when I talk about The Spiritualist and what I brought from a sense of self. And then why are you making this film? So this film, I always think about actually if you're making a horror film, it's important to know what other films in that portfolio catalogue have been done, what similar films, and how does yours stand out from the crowd? What are you adding to the narrative? So if you think about those two things, where it can save a lot of time, and certainly when you're working to a zero budget or a micro budget, these can be your best friends, because if you're working about what you know and what you own, and certainly the last point here, if you're telling your story, well, who can tell your story better than yourself? And I think if you're writing with limitations of actual, what I call monetary value, well, then actually think about what you know. Think about the resources you have. What is your story and what's your instinctive insights that no one else has? And then also, it's really important to think about who is your audience. So as I said, I've done some films for the LGBTQ+ community. So when I do this, I think, right, so what do I know about the audience? What's my connection with the audience? What narrative has already been presented to them? and what can I do differently? So it's really important if you can have a connection with the audience and understand their expectations, well then you're halfway there. So I'm going to throw out a question that I'd like you all to put in the chat box. And that question is, what currencies are available? So I'd like to hear from you in the chat box. We know money is a currency, and that's obviously a big currency, but what other currencies are available to you? So when I talk about currencies, really this is something that enables you to make a film. We know money enables you to craft out a film because you can pay for services. But what else do you have that's disposable to you? What other enablers or currencies can you utilize to create a film? If we say money, you don't have money, what are the other currencies available to you?
Well, so far we have Ian, who suggested time and credits, like on IMDb. Nicholas has talked about product placements.
Product placements, absolutely. So if I start with time, that's a really good point. And if you look here, here are some alternative funding currencies that I've come up with. Now, time is a resource, would you say? And I think at the moment, what's fair to say, we all have plenty of time. Time where people are in furlough, in lockdown. I feel there's a lot of time on my hands. And in fact, I'm using that time to carve out, I've made a contract with myself, I'm going to make a film a day. And I've created a YouTube channel where I just make a film a day, up to 2 minutes, called Lockdown Lunatics. And it's me surviving lockdown in isolation with my partner and all the fun and frolics you get with that. And actually, time can be your best friend because you've got a lot of time to think. You've got a lot of time to like ponder, reflect. And if you've got other resources, I mean, what are the other resources and the other currencies that you need?
Well, we also have from, like I said, from Nicholas was talking about the opportunities with like product placement. So whether that's working with companies for kind of advertising. And Bradley has just posted to say favors from friends and family. So maybe locations or access to kind of sets.
Brilliant. So
actors.
Thanks, Jim. There's a lot in there. And I think actually when you're looking at, as you said, looking at your friends, looking at the skills that are available, the resources that they have, who has a camera, do you have the equipment from like Ravensbourne, for example? Do you have access to that? Or the contacts you have with their skills and services that they have, their availability, their time, and their services. So I always think when I go into a film, I think actually, what skill sets have I acquired over the years? Who can I trust that can really bring their A game with these skills? Or where do I need to go and maybe do a bit more research or a bit more networking to get skills that I don't have? But I think the number one currency that I like to work to, and this is what I applied to carving out Paranormal Farm 1, 2, and 3, was passion. I think passion, I don't know if you agree, is infectious. I think if you're really buzzing, excited, and full of passion, you have an idea, it emanates from you. And people generally want to connect with other passionate people because there's usually a route to action. They see that belief, that self-belief, and that desire to do, and they want to be part of that excitement. And when I go to the Paranormal Farm experience, I mean, it was what I call a passion project. So what I wanted to do was, because I'd made a few films with budgets, storyboards, having to go through agents, and I remember going back to my childhood, the main thing that made me most feel alive, and I don't know who shares this, is being a passionate filmmaker. I used to hire a video camera from the video shop and have it for the weekend, get my friends together. And it was that passion and that desire. We had no funds. They all went into hiring a video camera from the video shop. But that passion led us to carve out a story, film it, and we made a film for fun. And what I wanted to do with Paranormal Farm, it was never intended straight away to go to market, is I wanted to go back to play. I thought I want to put down everything that's serious about the industry and go back, because I do believe when you put yourself into this vulnerable position, playful place, you know, release that inner child and go and just have a passion project. what I found is creativity comes in abundance. I didn't need a script like I used to as a child. Stories evolve. And if you go to a landscape, where I went to a farm, and that was a resource that I had a friend's farm that I could go to, and I had their willingness to be in the project. And I think they saw the passion in me, and I onboarded them to be part of this filmmaking process. Well, that passion just made itself. And it was also my passion about other horror films, but particularly my passion about found footage that led me to carve out this narrative. So I'm thinking, I've understood the history of horror, because I soak it up like a sponge. I just throw myself into horror. I just like watch everything and watch it again and again, and go to horror film festivals. I go to the Q&As and soak it all up, think, right, what's missing from this narrative? But when I was on that farm, Paranormal Farm 1, we made, and it was literally 2.5 days. We went there for a long weekend, slept there, and just went there, and we left with literally enough footage to carve out in the edit a feature film. And what was interesting, and this was a passion project, I didn't have an end game to upload it to Amazon. Then there's a lost footage, found footage company that wanted to take it on. It's gone to Google Play, and different distribution platforms are picking it up. But what was interesting is when I sent it out to get press and to get reviews, going online, talking to horror reviewers, what was interesting, where I had a bigger budget, or a budget, with another horror film, which was completely scripted and script doctored, and it had a lot of heart, had a lot of time, and didn't have much play. That was what's missing. But I sent it to the same people that reviewed that film. It actually scored higher, as it was getting on average 4 stars, but the other had on average 3 stars. And I thought, how interesting is that? That tells me if you just lend yourself and throw yourself into a passionate place, it's quite surprising sometimes the creativity and the spontaneity that you surround yourself with, and the magic that happens. Because I do think creativity is born in the now, in the moment. And sometimes when we're storyboarding, all we're doing is disabling everything that could naturally happen. We're blocking it every process, whether it's using this actor, using this storyboard, using the weather has to be scripted, and everything has to fit into place. But when you just break down all barriers, and you're not restrained by money, you're not restrained by, I mean, literally I was filming it on my iPhone, and you can film on 4K, shoot. And one of the skills, when I'm looking at these down here, my skill was, I believe I have a good eye for, photography. So I was utilizing that. And actually this passion project was born out of my frustration of making other films where I loved working with the DOPs that I had, but every now and then there's that director in you that just wants to rip the camera from the hands and shoot it because you think you can frame it a little bit better, and you want that, but you have to trust them to do their job because obviously they've got more training experience in it. So it lent itself. It just gives you that power, that passion just to do it, and feel if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter, you just reshoot. So to me, the biggest currency that you can use is your inner passion, that inner desire that you have to carve out your story. I'd always think about, what is your story? What story could you tell? What do you know most about? And how can you throw yourself into that? And particularly in lockdown, I know quite a few filmmakers are using this time, as we said, time as a resource. One of my friends, I don't know if you know, an actor, director, Leon Lopez, he shot a film called Hello Google. If you Google that, the film will come, it's on YouTube. And it's just about somebody living on his own, in isolation, in lockdown, and the only voice he hears is Google. He speaks to Google. And I thought, good concept. And he used the resources he had, the camera, his flatmate, and shot a film, and it's out there. And I just think it's phenomenally, it's going to do phenomenally successful, but you can watch it for free on YouTube should you want to watch that. So all I'd say is just think about the resources that you have, your enablers, where you can carve out your own film. Also, I'd say think about the post-production. So you've got production, you've got the pre-production, and in post, just think about the power of the film festivals. So certainly with The Spiritualist, that's been a real enabler for the film to get traction. Like with The Spiritualist, we sold it to Turkey, it played out in 32 cinemas over 2 weeks. And what we did in the edit is made sure that we just carved out the best trailer that we could with this film. And we wanted to think, right, how can we sell this? And another enabling tool that I do, certainly when it was made, the Spiritualist was only made on £12,000. And it's, if you look on IMDb, it probably suggests it's like 250,000. because I think the sales agent has to put it in for a price that it appears to look. But there's a lot of magic and smoke and mirrors in the industry. But with the Spiritualist, what I'd say is make a book, get a really good photographer on set, and just get some really good sort of pictures. And this can be a really good tool that you can take to your film festivals. I know I went to Cannes and I used this book and we sold it to different distributors just off the strength of the book. It's nice to take something with you, because when you're in a film festival, like when I go to, like, if you go to Cannes or the Berlin Film Festival, or even like BFI Flare, wherever you go, if you can take something, because you obviously can't play the film straight away, but what you can do is that people can have quick synopses, they can have a snapshot into the film, what it looks like, they can meet the cast and crew, hear from their hearts and minds, see pictures. This is the house that we shot in. So the Spiritualist was actually shot in 12 days. So it's £12,000, 12 days, and it got pretty much worldwide distribution. But what I was going to say about the book, it helps you sell the product and it helps you go to the film festivals. But why I say film festivals could be your best friend was actually when I had this as a nugget of an idea in my head, I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I didn't have a house to house this idea, and it was just a nugget of an idea. And when I was at the Cannes Film Festival, we went to a Hedda Gabler event. It was a nice party on a rooftop. And I met this guy, and there was the trailer was playing for Hedda Gabler. And I saw this house in the trailer. That's where they had a scene shot. I said, wow, that house is phenomenal. What I'd give to go and shoot at a location like that. He said, I own that. That's where I live. It's in Cheltenham, called Manor by the Lake. It's a wedding venue. And I said, I've got this idea. I feel like there's a connection. I mean, we really just got on really well. He invited me down for the weekend. And actually, I just stayed there, soaked it all up. And I wrote the script based on the house. So every room told a story as I walked around. And that's why I say, if you can use a location, instead of, like, you know, if you have money, you can recreate things and throw money at anything. But if something is just perfect and you can write your script to suit that location, well, you save hundreds of thousands. And literally, it's a 16-bedroom manor that we shot in. And it would have cost us over £120,000 to hire the manor for the 12 nights, because they fed us, gave everyone accommodation. It's literally arrive, shoot till we finish, then leave. And usually this is what I do with all my films. It's usually one area, like Greenwich was the snapshot for The Cost of Love. Cheltenham, the Manor by the Lake, was for The Spiritualist. The Adored was Percy Bysshe Shelley. He had a house in Snowdonia and we filmed there for The Adored. And Paranormal Farm 1, 2 and 3 were just all on one farm. So having one location, going in, carving out your narrative or writing your script on set can be priceless when it comes to saving money. And because I got on so well with the guy, and again, he saw the passion, the desire in me, he said, we won't charge you. So literally I just made £120,000 in-kind sponsorship, which is like when you're talking about product placement. If you can get in-kind sponsorship, then he just said, the only condition, shoot it in February, out of season, there's no weddings, we'll feed your cast and crew, accommodate you, invite us to the screening. So literally, you don't always know. A lot of people argue, but you need a film to go to a film festival with. And I always say, no, you do not. Go to a film festival with an open heart, open mind, just talk, connect, network. And I think sometimes just by getting on with, you might not even know that there's a deal done until 2 years later. And then somebody comes out of the blue and says, oh yeah, I met you and you're talking about something. I have an idea. I think you'd be the guy to do this because. And it's really just putting yourself out there in a place to connect with people. I'm going to go back to my slide pack. What I'd say about when you do create your film, the beauty of doing the trilogy of Paranormal Farm 1, 2 and 3 was because it was in the now. And what I particularly liked doing with this was working with non-actors. Now, I'm not a qualified actor, but one of my passions is to act. And I studied theatre and dance at Roehampton University. So I did do performance. But there was always a little bit of a passion and desire to be a central lead actor in a film, but I never really thought I'd do it because I knew my strengths lay more behind the camera. But with the process, sometimes you think, you don't have to think, what can't I do? What are the blocks? Think about what you can do. And I always think with an open mind, what was unique about this was I wanted to be a film. It was a passion project. I've got 2 real life farmers that run this farm. Let's carve out the narrative over the weekend. All I had was 1 A4 sheet of bullet points. And I knew what I contracted with the farmers is you just carry on doing your weekend, day-to-day farming. I will just arrive on the farm and ask you questions, and I'll just have my mobile. So there's no sound, there's no crew, it's just me literally in the mobile. No sound, all the sound was in camera. So I had to be creative of going close or just being creative with us talking loud. But it had to feel, what's good about found footage, it doesn't have to be perfect. So when you don't have the money, like even uploading it to things like Amazon, it passes a different quality check. Because if it's about authenticity, and you say, actually, it's supposed to be dirty sound, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to hear the wind, it's not supposed to be perfect, we're on a farm, it's found footage. Well, then it lends to authenticity. And I think the reviewers were really generous to Paranormal Farm because it had heart and it had authenticity and it added something to the narrative. And without spoiling what that is, it gets kind of meta, but if you want to watch them, then you can sort of have your own sort of journey and have your own sort of viewpoints on that. But what was really good that I love doing is actually, because I like documentaries and I like just capturing truth. And I think if you can just, it's not very intimidating, put a phone up, just talk to somebody, engage with them, catch them sort of unaware, you have to set the stage right where you're capturing authenticity. And because I did that with farmers, people were really confused. Are these actors incredibly good actors on a farm, or are they farmers? And nobody quite knew, and there's a whole ambiguity around it. And I think where that was testimony to was actually them feeling relaxed, feeling at home, because literally they are at home, you arriving, not intruding, but just subtly filming, recording, and carving out a narrative. So the way I presented this film is whatever, I went there with a simple format. Their daughter had disappeared on the farm, and they called me a paranormal investigator to find out, because there's been some paranormal activity happening on the farm, and also a disappearance of daughter. And that's all we knew. We agreed that would be the narrative. Everything else we had to make up scene by scene. So if I'd ask a question and they'd respond a certain way, I had to think in the moment, go with that. And that's what I mean by creativity being born in the moment, not needing a script, capturing the truth, capturing real emotion, and just going for that authenticity and the authenticity of the farm, like working on one location, making the film the hero, having no crew, keeping things simple, actually really worked to make this a stronger film. And I think when you set up no rules, you're kind of making the rules. You're keeping it real. And like you say, I didn't even have to spend time investing in writing a script. And I think it's something that you, and because that's ascribed to my way of play, making something up, carving a narrative, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, I thought that was the beauty of the Paranormal Farm trilogy. And I think that's why they favoured it over The Spiritualist. So what I'd say is think about editing your best trailer, create an online buzz, send out, get reviews. But what I'd say about getting reviews, it's got to be a conversation. Certainly online, there's so many people and magazines and people that will watch your film if you enter a conversation with them. But there's a lot of people that just go there and use them. Can you do a film? It's all a bit like take. It's like, I want something from you. Thank you, goodbye. But don't do that. It's got to feel sincere, authentic. Create relationships with these people that could be, I mean, it wasn't hard for me because I was generally in touch with these people anyway, subscribing to these things because I have got a passion in horror. And I think if you're keeping up with the narrative and the conversations and you're part of the conversations, well then when there's something where you need to benefit or your film needs people to watch, well they're quite keen to ask you to see it. So that's quite nice, if people say, oh, can I watch your film? I'll write a review. That's better than you banging on the door saying, I'd love you to watch this film. So just be part of a bigger conversation. And that should be happening naturally, even in pre-production. So I say, seek the press, sell your film. I think if you make a good film, it's got heart, well, then there will be a buyer. But as I say, to sell your film, hang out at film festivals, go to the film markets, and there's lots of people online now that are really just after lots of material. And one of my producer friends called Taz, a Turkish filmmaker, he started providing content to Amazon, and he's provided over 3,000 films. So it's called My Production. So if you have a film, he takes shorts and features, and you want your film to get a wider audience, what he'll do, he'll get it on the platform Amazon, also Google Play, and he's got contacts with Netflix now. And he's started over the last 5 years building a real big, he's even taking films, he's got a subsidiary now called My Spotlight Independent. So he'll be shining a spotlight on films that maybe wouldn't get that audience. So these will be old classical films, like he's got the old black and white Scrooge, and he's got lots of films that will maybe never see an audience outside of a festival. So he's taking films to a festival. So connect with these people. So that's My Production, or My Spotlight Independent. He's called Taz, and feel free to get in touch with him if you have films that need an audience. But what I would say, connect with your audience, keep talking, do Q&As. And what was interesting in Paranormal Farm, somebody wrote a really scathing review on it, which I love. I think people are talking about your film, brilliant, embrace these people. So I thanked them. I said, thank you for, not only did they write a scathing review, they didn't write it, they filmed themselves and put it on YouTube. And I got in touch with them, I said, it was brilliant, it made me laugh. In fact, we're doing a sequel, and I would like that review to be part of it, because this is where it gets a bit meta. It's going back to do a film of a film behind the scenes. And actually they agreed to put that online YouTube clip. I could use it in my film, and we were watching online reviews of our film in a meta approach. So I'd say build connections with your audience, whether they love or hate your film. These are the people that are making a commentary on your film. So embrace all of that. And I know some people get sensitive to that kind of thing. So that's Paranormal Farm 3, 1, 2, 3 that was made on a zero budget. Did cost some petrol going to a farm in Kent, but that was it. That's all I actually spent on it. So what was good, as soon as we put it onto these platforms, straight away, the first quarter, we were in profit, because it was really just me and Taz splitting the profits, and we gave some money to the farmers out back end. So we all made some good money off the back of this, which was really just a passion project. So I think that's interesting. Even the bigger films with more budget, like this film, it may go online saying The Spiritualist has like a 200,000 budget. I can't remember what they say it is now. But actually our actual spending on this film was 12,000. But when I say, why are you making this film? In The Spiritualist, I wrote a film about my personal journey. It was inspired by true events. I love horror. And at the time I was living with a partner, still living with my partner, but he went through a very rare illness called Morvan syndrome, which made him kind of live an altered, like an altered reality. It was like there's mental health involved, and he everything was just, he got very argumentative. He was a manager in a shop, but then he'd throw out the customers out the shop, and he'd fall out with everyone. And then it was all about the blood-brain barrier, blood going through to the brain barrier. And there's only 5 people in the UK that have this illness. It's so rare. And what was quite scary for me was seeing his character and personality change literally overnight. And over a couple of months, I didn't recognize this person anymore that I was cohabiting with. And this Dominic became very angry, violent, very frustrated in everything, and very paranoid. And to me, I can only relate it to maybe the lady in The Shining, living in that house and feeling quite vulnerable, but feeling scared not only for yourself, who's now living out a carer role, but actually the partner that is actually could be seen as the patient, and trying to do something with this, because there's so much emotion. It was so tragic and scary and heartbreaking, and we're both operating from a place of fear daily. And I thought, I've got to do something positive with this real life. I was soaking up like a sponge. I felt I am living on a set of a horror film. And so, if I am, and Dominic certainly was. So I thought, right, I'm going to use this with his approval and carve it out into the narrative. So when I got the house, as I told you from Cairns, And when I went there, the script wrote itself. I was going room to room. I thought, right, okay, so I'm using all this emotions about somebody that's personality changes. There's a ghost of the former self. And I was bringing it all in with my personal experience of somebody that suffered night terrors growing up, where I used to freeze, sense people coming into the room. And what was quite interesting to me is I felt like I was connecting on a spiritual level. And when I had to go to Dominic's medical intervention, they're talking, do you see people? Do you hear voices? Dominic was saying, yes, I hear voices. I see people at night. All these things. I thought, oh, so have I when I've had night terrors? So with this mental health or this mental illness and with my spiritual beliefs, and I thought, actually, somebody I know who is a psychic, actually, where's the grey? There's a grey area. You know, quite often these people that live altered realities, there's not much compassion for them through the majority of people, because they're often seen as slightly cuckoo, slightly unhinged. They don't get much compassion from people, and there's a lack of understanding. So I thought, right, I want to use this and just put it into a film. So when I went to that house that weekend, it just all came together. It's a perfect fit. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, why are you making this film? I wanted to make this film. It's a creative offset, offloading. It's my therapy, but also it's so steeped in richness that I thought, actually, to feel like you're isolated in a house with stuff that you can't understand, this is what every isolated horror film like The Shining, and even Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs being isolated, The Misery, where he was isolated, when he was tied to the bed and did the hocking, whacked his feet. All these things, there's usually a theme of isolation and fear. So I just drew on my personal experience and took it to an authentic space. So it kind of ended up creating it, and it didn't cost much money at all. So looking down these points, understand what other films have been done, but what are you bringing new to that narrative? And I'd say pitch your idea to industry experts. And I'd say when you're showing your film, get feedback, and don't be too stuck by your vision where you can't then further edit it. I know when I did The Cost of Love, Peccadillo Pictures ended up doing distribution. It sold in about 8 countries for the first feature, but the condition was I had to shave half an hour off. It's a 2-hour film, and I had to go down to 90 minutes. And of course, I didn't want to turn around and say, no, I'm not doing that. That's my vision. I love the full 2 hours. You have to get it to market, and you have to know what you can let go of. And I put it all in the special features anyway, so it's not lost forever. So you've just got to have a bigger picture and be able to take advice from other people. So really, when you're doing a film on a smaller budget, and micro budget can be anything from like 10 million to even 12,000. Some people say that's not like micro budget, that's a no budget. Different festivals have different criteria. But all I can say is when you're working on a small budget, all of these things apply even more. So definitely working with trusted partners, you have to spend extra time motivating people. And I think if you're passionate and people see your belief, that's usually enough to motivate them. And certainly with a house to say, you're feeding, you're staying here, we've got a really good idea that we're working on. There's ways you can motivate people, because people will just care that little bit more when they feel seen and they feel heard. And it comes down just to respecting everyone and their individual crafts, and thank people. And I think thanking people for everything they do every day that's what brings people back wanting to work with you again. And I know other filmmakers out there that aren't very grateful, and actually people don't want to work with them again. So it's carve out your own narrative, carve out how you want to be seen. What is your brand? Do you want people to rework with you again? And what I'd say is spend every penny as if it's your own money, because whether it's private investment, whether there's no money, whatever you do, money as a currency, I think it's overrated. But when you have it and you're trusting it for other people to turn that to a commercial product, you cannot be seen just wasting it away. And I know too many people do that. I do think sometimes when you don't have money, it forces you to be extra creative, and it forces you to think about other approaches. And it's in that vulnerable space where you're having to be innovative. That's usually where you make more groundbreaking choices. And that's usually where people think, oh, I've not seen that done before. It's not a carbon copy, cookie cutter sort of footprint of something else. So I'd say be daring, be brave. And the best thing we did on Spiritualist, it was 12 days, but we had 10 days where it was pretty much we knew what we were doing, but we had the last 2 days as contingency days. And what we did in those 2 days, which was part of the reason I did Paranormal Farm after, was because in those 2 days, it's everything that wasn't in the script. What would now, I mean, we had them as contingency days should we need them to do things we didn't get, but fortunately we got everything. So we really used those days to do unscripted things, like a dream sequence down by the lake. And to me, it's one of the best shots of, you know, we just saw dusk and it was going icy over the lake, and we used that, and straight away it just looked more epic, and it's in the trailer. And it's a money shot, it's a mood, it's a scene stealer. And it's those unspoken scenes, the things that you don't ascribe to. I think those are the bits in films that I like the most, because they're there, because they serve a purpose that wasn't thought about a year ago. And it's that new way of thinking, I think, that just brings a lot of merit and bigger picture. So rehearse your complex scenes. We had a scene with a seance, and it was about a 16-minute sequence. And I wanted to do it all in one take. So we had half a day where we just rehearsed, and we did it in pretty much one take, just the end. Got a little bit messy, and we cut in a couple of times. But I think for 12 minutes, we had just one camera shot, which kept you in the now, in the mood. It didn't feel like you were being edited or cheated, and it really brought you in around the table as if you were sat there. So I do like rehearsing complex scenes, because that saves time and money. And know your vision, know your purpose. I think if you do all those things, it will give you a film with merit and stature without having all the money that you need to throw at it. Engage with the audience, sell your film, get the buzz, we talked about that. Carve out good posters and stills for your marketing. I think that's everything. If you go to a film festival now, I remember the days we used to go and give out postcards and stills and everything. You can take a book, but actually people just want, I'd say the best thing to do, if you see people that you want your film to go with, you've got to know why you want them to represent your film. So you've got to at least know a handful of their films, start a conversation with them, and instead of thrusting your business card at them, make them ask for yours. Because that's the best approach. If somebody asks for your card, like, oh, so why have you come up? What's your interest? They say, oh, I've just done this film. It's like, oh, really, tell me more. And you get them curious. Well, then that builds the appeal the other way. Because they get a lot of people that just bamboozle themselves, throw themselves on, oh, I want you to take my film. Why? Oh, because I see you've got some other horror posters here. My film's a horror. Well, it doesn't sound that engaging to them because they don't feel that seen or supported. So get them curious in you. And now the way is actually they'll ask for your card, and if it's got some one-click links, it will play your trailer. So cut an awesome trailer, have a power paragraph, have your synopsis, make everything that easy, but one click away, you're making their job easy. And if they offer you their card, then you can just email them simple links.
One question that came in from Charles around distribution, which I kind of think you covered to some degree. This question came in earlier, but who would you go to help market a film once you've created it?
I'd say don't wait until you've created it. Like, so with my first film, Peccadillo, I bought it. Actually, I went to them while I was in a rough edit, but when I went to Cannes, this was a year before I shot the film, and I was walking, it's the first year I was at Cannes, walking around the marketplace. Really, all I had to go on, I was a little bit like, I don't know, I felt lost in the big sort of marketplace. I was walking around, I was looking at posters with films that were similar. Then I'd go away discreetly Google, see what film, if there's a common ground with my film. And then, so when I went to this, just when it was a nugget of an idea and a loose script with the Cost of Love, and I went to this company that had a similar LGBTQ plus portfolio. At the time, they didn't have the Q plus. So back then, and I just started a conversation saying, oh, I've seen this, there's a poster called Mr. Right, and I actually saw that film. And I said, great film, good to know, how's that film doing for you? And then he was like, oh, what's your interest? I said, I've just got the script, and obviously it will be, it's not shot yet. Then I found out that actually he gave me about 10 points. And it came out from, somebody advised me, if you engage with them and find out, get their input, and then when you go back to them saying, based on our conversation, I listened to you, that way they feel heard, they feel part of it, then actually they're more inclined to, and he actually took it and sold it to another 5 countries, but based on being I mean, I'd say go to somebody with a similar portfolio, but hasn't got your film because it's not got, the narrative's not gone this direction. If you can sell that extra dimension, but definitely make it a conversation and definitely make sure your contracts are solid. But I'd say make them feel as earlier on part of that process, even if like, can you recommend a cast? Can you, what's on trend at the moment within this genre? What's doing well for you? What's not selling well? If you can tap in, because they care about making money. They're paying all this money at the film markets to make money. And that's not cheap to arrive. So if you can demonstrate that actually you've got a commercial viable thing that's going to add to that and not take you don't want to be a time stealer, take a lot of the time where there's a little reward for them. So you kind of got to go with a bit of a business brain thinking this will be good for you. So if you can demonstrate that, but definitely do your research and think about what films am I watching, then go what distribution companies or sales agents take them. You can either go to a sales agent and there'll be or a distributor, like when I went to Peccadillo Pictures, they did LGBTQ+ in the UK. So if you've got one of those, Peccadillo are leading in that market. But then if you want something outside of UK, then you might need a sales agent from a film festival that can sell it to all the other territories maybe you don't have access to, unless you plan on just going around to all the festivals and sending it independently. But I'd advise you to get a reputable sales agent that has lots of connections with lots of independent distributors in different countries, because they do all the work for you. So I'd say it depends on your narrative, find out who represents a similar voice.
Yes, that's fantastic. Ian's kind of asked, how would you suggest students get in contact with distributors? I guess you've kind of covered that a little bit. I mean, I guess one other option as well is those, you know, whether it's Fright Fest, whether it's those kind of smaller festivals that happen in London, whether it's about particular genres,
yes,
and looking at that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think Fright Fest is brilliant for horrors. They really do champion new horror filmmakers. And if you're part of the network with them and you turn up and you're curious and you're speaking up at the Q&As, you go to the parties, you meet the people, and they get a flavour of who you are, then you're part of that family. I feel very part of the Flair Film Festival. You can sign up as a delegate, and I didn't know this like 5 years ago. I was a little bit slow, and like, so somebody said, you know, you can just be part of it. You can watch all the films, be a delegate, and hang out and go to the networks. You go to the screen talks. I had no idea. I thought, well, why didn't nobody ever tell me this, or why did I not investigate enough? I just thought you can be a delegate of a festival had you had a film included, but you don't. You just have to be interested, whether it's a sci-fi film festival, the Flair Film Festival, it's the LGBTQ+, or the Fright Festival horror. Go to a festival that supports your genre and just get talking, sell yourself.
Fantastic. Charles has also asked a couple of other questions. One is about, have you got any advice about finding investors that maybe aren't friends or family? Like what few tips you might have for how to get people interested in a financial investment in a film?
I think, see, for me, if I'm to look at, if I need finance, actual like monetary finance, then I think you've got to know what your strengths are and what they're not. So through all the film festivals, I've got some really good producers that I could work with, whether the script's right for them. So what I'd say is don't do everything. I know I'm not great at raising money. Yes, I've got like 120,000 equivalent. I got the house, but that wasn't raising money. It was in kind sponsorship. I just, you know, I put myself out there, and after a few festivals, something paid off. So I'm good at creating opportunities. So think about actually, is it money you're looking for, or is it opportunities? Because sometimes our to-go place is, let's get the money. And sometimes that can block our creativity, or it stops us looking in other routes. I'd say if you've got time and resources where you can carve out an exciting film that's carving out a new narrative, you don't always need money. I'd say get up and go and make it happen. But if your film absolutely does, and you, of course, what the greatness about that, you're supporting the film industry in its entirety, with everyone's getting paid and everyone, you know. So I'd say get a producer, or if you're a producer, then work on what being a producer means, if it means about raising funds. But I'd say certainly when I go to the Cannes Film Festival, they have a producers network, and I've gone twice as a producer, and you meet all these, you go to like the Swedish Pavilion, go to the British Film Pavilion, and there's lots of talks there about opportunities to onboard producers for projects they're looking at. So I'd say invest in time and opportunities, put yourself in those conversations.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Maybe a couple more questions just to finish things off. One from Charles. If anyone else has got another question, please put it through. Another one from Charles about, Charles says he's always puzzled on the planning and production side of making a feature. How long did it take you to come up with an idea to kind of the final cut? And I guess that's different for those ones that are kind of just exploring what you're doing with the location versus where you're actually trying to pre-prep detail.
Yeah, it is. Like, as I said, Paranormal Farm, we arrived on Friday, come back on Monday with the finished film. Then we had 2 weeks in edit to finalise. So that was a 2-week and weekend. But then the Spiritualist, the idea was planted, went to the film festival, and it wasn't until maybe 18 months later that we'd shot the film, wrote, shot, and had the film ready for market. But then actually the market sat on it for another 15 months before they released it. So then it extended that window to three years.
Wow, yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
I must have thought that way. And I guess where we're so we got a question from Bradley. Bradley's doing directing at the moment. I'm a good guess here at Ravensbourne, and writing his own scripts. He was thinking of when he gets to that point where he's got a final script and he wants to take it into production, what would be those kind of first steps he might take at that stage?
I'd say if you've got actors in mind, or even if you haven't, do some table reads, and get it to the best place you can. Get your script worthy of just sending out to people if you're looking at finance, or if you're not, still do table reads. Get your idea until you and external people think ready to go. And then I think what's good about pre-production, you're not having to invest much sense currency as in financial currency. You could just be meeting up at the picture house, reading through over a coffee and perfecting your vision. It's so much cheaper to get things wrong and to rectify in around a table read than it is when you're on set and you're holding up lights and people in hotels. So get it right, ready to go in pre-production as much as you can, unless it's a playful experiment where, you know, you could carve out your narrative there. So I'd say read it. I'd say make sure that everything is considered, whether it's location, challenge everything and debate everything. Think, is this the best for this? Why does this location add to, why is it driving forward my narrative? Am I just making do with it? Is it pulling it back? So just ask lots of questions, get other perspectives, and just listen to them and don't be stubborn. I guess that's it, really, just being open and in a place of willingness.
Thank you. That's great. No more questions from the chat at the moment, so maybe leave it with one final question. You said you love fan footage.
Yeah.
Would you have any, other than your own films, any recommendations, whether it's like the classics, whether you would recommend any kind of particular films to look at? What are your favourite fan footage films?
Well, funny enough, when I saw Blair Witch, I thought it was the marketing around that at the Sundance that made that really, people bought into the illusion. And I think that's the thing. If you can create an illusion that people can subscribe to, then I think it's more, you create that authenticity. And I think the marketing was very clever on that. And I think, but the taking of, is it Joanna, Jessica, it deals with mental illness as well, found footage, can't remember what it's called. I saw that, the taking of Jessica something, might not even be Jessica. I remember that, it was really, I watched it and it sort of blew me away. I thought that's really powerful. This Hell House, that's really good. It's having devices, why you believe, even Bad Ben, it's like, I think Bad Ben, it does what it says on the sort of can thing. If you believe in, it has to feel authentic, that it doesn't feel forced. And I think there's a lot of people now making found footage, they think it's got to be shaky. Well, who goes out and shoots shaky? We're all getting masters at just using our cameras quite smoothly. And you just got to think, as long as its intention and purpose feels authentic and you buy into the illusion, I think there's a lot of films that do that well. I think the Paranormal Activity Part 1 did that really well. And that, again, using security cameras, that was a game changer for running around. You know, Wreck is a really good film as well, and following a fire brigade around in Madrid. So there's lots of good concepts. So it's the concepts I think I buy into, and sticking to the purpose of authenticity.
Thank you so much, Karl. That's
okay, thank you.
Cheers.
Okay, thank you, everyone.